Apparently he retweeted something pretty base that I'm supposed to watch.
You wrote an article based on a speech you gave at the NatCon conference, which exploded the internet, I think it's fair to say, when super viral, caused a lot of debate and discussion. And it's basically, I mean, I'll let you say it in your own words, but it's kind of a little bit about how the fact that women now control or at least represent the majority of the employees at many institutions is one of the reasons that society has gone the way it has. Is that?
Yes. The phrase we're looking for is a geno or gynocentric society. The world is currently run by women because men gave women all the rights that they have. And this is the truth. We used to be might equals right. We have long forgone that type of society. And now the weak have the power. The majority of men are simps. So they have given women all this power on their desperate parade to attempt to get sex. And now women have gone corrupt with that very same power, obliterating men's lives over mere inconveniences. And now the world's fucked up. That's the truth. And everybody knows it.
Fair.
I think that's fair to say.
Or, to be fair, at least America.
Some people have reacted to the piece by, acting as if I'm saying women cause all the problems in the world.
They don't cause all the problems. They just cause the majority of them.
I'm definitely not saying that, but I am saying that feminization has caused one particular problem, and that is wokeness.
Yes, and being a feminist, especially modern feminist, it has essentially led to the destruction of any common sense used in today's society. It's all gone. Modern feminism is a fucking plague of the mind.
Like a lot of people, I was baffled by the woke phenomenon. Why did everyone seemingly go crazy all at once in the summer of 2020? It was inexplicable. It seemed to be mass hysteria, genuinely.
Yes.
And the more I thought about what caused it, which is a very important question, because if we know what causes it, we know how to prevent it from happening in the future. I read an article that someone else wrote that put forward a really simple, elegant thesis, which is that wokeness is simply feminine patterns of behavior applied to institutions where women had not been very well represented until recently.
What happened is during COVID, everybody got on the internet and everything became focused about optics. And it no longer became about doing the right thing. It was about being seen as the person who does the right things. And a lot of people are fucking stupid. They are. And Adolf Hitler's Mein Kampf, this is real, by the way, he would talk about if you control the world by controlling the people who are the stupidest, which is the majority of the world. So you must speak to people as if they're fucking retarded. That's pretty much layman's of what was said. And what people do now is essentially they just say the things that sound the nicest. But if you think about them, they don't really make any sense. But the problem is the majority of people don't have the ability to think. It's like when you say anybody can be whatever they want to be. That sounds really nice until you realize that people are identifying as Apache attack helicopters.
Women tend to be more consensus-focused, consensus-oriented. Men, when they're approaching a moral question, will ask, what are the facts? What are the rules? Whereas women will say, what are the relationships at play here? How can we make everybody happy? Yes. How can we reach an outcome that will satisfy all the parties? As opposed to the male perspective of how do we reach an outcome that is just and according to the rules. That sounded a lot like wokeness to me. And the sort of piece that made it all click into place for me.
It's very simple. Men, facts over feelings. Women, feelings over facts. Then we have the feminization of women, which has now allowed simp culture to overrun and give women all those power. And now there's not enough men to take it back, at least where things are right now, until people wake up.
Was the coincidence of timing. It is the case, just we can all agree as a matter of fact, that a lot of institutions that went woke or were affected by wokeness became demographically female in the last 5 years. Law schools in America turned majority female in 2016, and they've gotten a little bit more female every year since then. I think now it stands at 55, 56%. The New York Times became majority female in its workforce in 2018, which is maybe why it was so susceptible to the fads of wokeness and the internal policing and the Slack revolts that took place internally over there.
The problem with women overtaking college campuses means liberalism is overtaking college campuses, which means, to be honest, if you want to go to college, that's where you go not to get educated, where to become feminized. to become mentally raped. It's fucking terrible how much of a joke college is these days, and I don't know why anybody is still burning 6 figures to waste their children's time in it.
Medical schools are now majority female. The white-collar workforce overall, employees in the United States with college degrees, a majority of them are women. And managers, management positions in the U.S. workforce, 46% female, so almost majority female. So the fact that all of these institutions tipped over to being majority female around the same time that wokeness emerged seemed to me that couldn't possibly be a coincidence.
And there's so many questions within that. I guess the first stress test of this argument would be, well, they were also very close to being majority female 10 years prior to that, right? So does going from 48 to 52%, is that really such a major shift that it would cause something as dramatic as that?
Well, you'd be surprised. I thought that the higher education workforce, professors in the United States, would have gone female ages and ages ago. But it actually only tipped female in 2023. So we think of feminization as something that happened a long time ago, but it really does take a certain amount of time for time to pass and older generations to retire. But I think the reason why attaining a critical mass of women has such a dramatic effect is that we're not talking about individual differences between individual men and individual women, but differences in group dynamics.
Sure.
For example, you might be able to say from the perspective of psychology as a discipline that women tend to be more emotional than men and men tend to be more rational, or any kind of generalization about men and women might have a certain amount of empirical
I would say it's very fair for straight women and straight men, yes.
support based on surveys. But at the end of the day, those differences are not massive, right? Like female support for free speech is greater or is less than male by double digits, but not, it's not like night and day. But when it comes to group dynamics, how does an organization function? How does an institution deal with conflict? When you're talking about those kinds of things, those tend to be more binary. Like either you solve your conflicts within an organization in a masculine way or in a feminine way. Either open conflict is something that your institution will tolerate or it's not. So that's the kind of thing where once you get a critical mass, you really kind of have to pick which one you're going to do.
Well, you mentioned consensus and sort of empathy and including all perspectives. That really isn't what happened with wokeness, though, is it? Because it was more like, we've come to a new consensus and anyone who doesn't agree is going to get killed, basically. Is that really, I mean, that might be the way women deal with this on a group basis. I don't know. You tell me.
No, it's hard to verbalize some of these differences because
Listen, if people don't think that women are violent and like to deal with things with violence that they don't understand, you should really look up the domestic abuse rates of lesbian relationships. 35% of women have experienced rape, physical violence, and are stalked by an intimate partner. More recent, 2023, 30% experience sexual violence, and stalked by an intimate partner. Men, 29% have experienced rape, physical violence, and are stalked by an intimate partner. You'll never hear about male rape, by the way. You will absolutely never hear about this. And now let's look up domestic abuse in lesbian relationships. Domestic abuse, intimate partner violence, or IBV, occurs in lesbian relationships at rates comparable to or higher than in heterosexual relationships, 43.8%. So it is a very staggering increase. Maybe it's not the men who are the problem, but women, when feelings don't work out in their favor, well, then they get violent. It's very obvious. And I'm sure you, as a kid, if you're a man watching this, you were taught that you were to never hit a woman. And I'm sure almost every man watching this has at some point been hit by a woman in their life. And they did nothing in return, because that's what we were trained to do from birth, is to allow women to do whatever they want. And if they hit you, never hit back.
It might be a convenient shorthand to say men are more comfortable with conflict than women. I think that makes a lot of sense, right? But a famous psychology study.
It's because you can argue logic, but you can't argue feelings.
Very often, if you're studying gender differences, and you're a psychologist, the way you'll do your studies, you'll just go to a playground and watch the kids playing and observe and count up how many times somebody hits somebody else or something like that. And there was an experiment of that type done, I believe, in Scandinavia, and it had a really funny outcome. They the psychologists observed the kids playing and counted up how many fights they had. And they said, okay, we observe that the men fight a lot more than the girls. But then as a supplement, they decided to confirm their observations by talking to the kids and saying, how many fights did you have today, Billy? Or how many fights did you have today, Sally? And their discrepancy was huge. They found that the girls reported having just as many fights as the men.
Yeah, it's because there are false accusers, obviously.
Level of conflict, male and female, on that schoolyard was exactly the same. But their observations had failed to record any of the female conflicts because when they asked the girls, oh, you had a fight today, what did that entail? It was things like Megan said she was going to tell everybody they couldn't be my friend anymore.
Which is where words of violence comes from, would be, I imagine, your argument.
That's right. That's right. And one of the most consistent psychological differences between men and women is women have a strong impulse of caring. Right, which is exactly, I'm not somebody who looks to evolutionary biology for the solutions to all human phenomena, but this particular one does seem glaringly Darwinian, right? That women see helpless things and they want to take care of them. That is definitely something that Darwin would find a pretty easy explanation for. But that's also something that wokeness can easily weaponize.
I think that is in terms of pets and babies. However, if a man cannot provide value to a woman, the odds of a male being a sugar daddy versus a female being a sugar mama is staggeringly different. You are a man, you must provide value. Doesn't matter if you're smart or handsome, but you must provide value. Sugar daddies vastly outnumber sugar mommies in the sugar dating world, often by a ratio of 7 to 1. Very, very, very different. That's why you as a man must find some way to provide value in your life. Whereas you're a woman, you just need to find the right guy who's okay with taking care of you, even though you provide next to nothing.
It means that if you can frame your political issue as a way of caring for some helpless class, then you're golden, right?
Minorities are babies.
That's right. But that is precisely what's going on at a deeper level. And that's why it's been so effective.
And Helen,
Sure, there are actually like white liberal women with an overwhelming amount of suicidal empathy who will see an image of a illegal immigrant's baby crying, and their solution is, let's let infinite brown people into our country right now, or we're racist. Kill Donald Trump. That's their whole mentality, and it's fucking insane.
Your article, and I encourage everyone to read it, it's fascinating whether you agree or disagree with it. But you cited one particular case, which is the former president of Harvard. So let's talk about that, because you use it as the main example for the thrust of your argument.
That's right. This was back in 2005. So this is before anybody had ever heard of wokeness. Now, I don't know if your listeners in the UK will be familiar with Larry Summers, but he was at that time probably one of the 10 most powerful people in the country. He was not just the president of Harvard. He had also been in Bill Clinton's cabinet. He had been at the World Bank. He was an academically eminent economist, very well connected in the Democratic Party, just a really powerful guy. He was invited to give a speech at a conference on female underrepresentation in science and math, and he decided to deliver his remarks off the cuff and to be really... And actually, if you know anything about Larry Summers, he has a reputation for being a really blunt guy. He's somebody who does not suffer fools gladly. So when you're getting the blunt Larry Summers, you're really getting something quite direct. But the talk was supposed to be off the record. And that's important to emphasize, that the women who listened to what he said and took it to a reporter were violating the rules that they had undertaken to follow when they attended. Anyway, he said that female underrepresentation in the hard sciences was attributable to a lot of different factors, not necessarily just prejudice or bias or the patriarchy not thinking ladies can be scientists. There is a difference of aptitude at the very, very, very high ends. If you're talking about people who are going to be tenured at MIT, that's the way out at the end of the bell curve, and there tend to be more men out there than women.
Well, let me explain how this works. So women on average are smarter than men. That is true. However, women lack the ability to have geniuses, whereas men have extreme outliers a lot more often than women. So women, on average, are usually like 5 to 6 IQ higher than men, but there's not really any comparable amount of female geniuses to male geniuses. On average, men and women in the U.S. and globally have very similar or identical mean IQ scores with negligible overall differences in general intelligence. However, men consistently show greater variability in IQ and cognitive test scores, leading to more men at both the high and low extremes of the distributions. This results in more men qualifying as geniuses, very high IQ thresholds, and more men at the low end. Yeah, so there's a lot of retards, but there's a lot of geniuses as well. And the problem is because men and women are, near the same for IQ, with women slightly usually having an edge, we're trying to force more women into these genius type practices like being a scientist, being an engineer. And the reality is they're just not as good at the high end as women are, or as men are. And we see this and we know this, but the force, DEI programs that exist that now want more representation of women in the fields is just fucking ridiculous. And I see a lot of women fighting for, we need more female doctors, we need more female lawyers, we need more female engineers, but I'm not seeing anybody say we need more female construction workers. I'm not seeing anywhere anybody saying we need more female plumbers. And the reason why that is because they want to use these DEI programs to their advantage, but they don't want to take any of the downsides that come with them either. And that's why it's complete bullshit. It's DEI when it's convenient and when we can guilt you into letting us in there, but we just don't want to actually earn it.
And also differences in taste. That is, women tend to gravitate towards professions and fields where they get to deal with people as opposed to something really cold and abstract like physics. Not to say that no women do, but that is the tendency. So women who are way out there at that end of the bell curve and have the aptitude for a career in hard science would maybe gravitate to something like medicine as opposed to something like...
So does that mean most midwits are women? Statistically, yes. Now, I will say the majority of retards are men. What's more dangerous than a retard is someone who is a retard but doesn't get that they are.
So Larry Summers said all this, and there were a bunch of lady scientists in the audience who said, "How dare you?" And they gave quotes to a reporter, something like, "I felt like I was going to throw up," or "I thought I was going to black out." And it became a huge controversy. And there were a lot of other controversies during Larry Summers' tenure as president of Harvard. So that was not the only thing that brought him down, but it was definitely at the very top of the list. And about a year later, he resigned.
And what's really interesting is with that case, and now I don't doubt that it caused a massive stir when he went on and basically went, "I'm going to freestyle."
And that's why you should really approach everything with skepticism and look into everything that, even me, look into everything that your streamer is saying. Look into everything that the YouTube video is referencing. Look into absolutely everything. Because you would be surprised by how quickly a Google search or a Grok will dispel the misinformation that's in front of you. The thing is, when a retard knows they're a retard, well, they won't try to rally anybody behind them. But when the retard doesn't get that they're a retard, then they can cause a lot of danger, especially to other retards. It's dangerous. That's what midwit fatigue is all about.
And deliver truth bombs to all of you. So here we are. Enjoy it. But he's also, if you get to be president of Harvard, you are going to make enemies aplenty. In order to get to that position, you're going to have to fire people, antagonize people, because that's just the nature of the job. So he would have had loads of enemies who were willing just to pounce at that particular moment, surely.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'm trying to remember some of the other controversies that have attended Larry Summers' career. And I believe one from his tenure at the World Bank was when he said, "Are we sure we want to really, really enforce labor laws against having sweatshops in third world countries? Because isn't having sweatshops good for them sometimes? I mean, it leads to economic development." He phrased it in a really blunt way. So like, this is a guy who has a history of putting his foot in his mouth in a way that I frankly find really admirable.
Yeah.
I think sweatshops are great. That's how I get to hit animes like Jujutsu Kaisen on my iPhone in a timely manner. It's great.
But certain people
awesome.
don't. So then has that been extrapolated right the way through society, essentially, is your argument?
That was one of the first times that a cancellation happened, that people heard somebody say something offensive, pitched a little fit, and managed to rob this person of his job. And the particular aspect of it that seemed so full of foreboding looking back is that there was no attempt to debate the issue rationally. There were plenty of people.
Because you can't ration someone out of a position they didn't ration themselves into to begin with. To quote by a great man, John Tectone, 2026.
Even people on the Harvard faculty with eminent expertise in the relevant scientific fields, willing to stand up and say, everything Larry Summers said was perfectly within the scientific mainstream. Greater male variability hypothesis, that's, everybody thinks that. So there were people willing to say he's right on the facts. Criticize him all you want for his tone, but he was right on the facts. And the women who went after his job were not willing to have that debate. They were not willing to talk about it rationally.
Well, that's another reason why people don't like me. They know that what I'm saying is not wrong. They just don't like the way that I'm saying it. And that's how you get a lot of angry people. It doesn't matter if what you're saying is the truth if you said it in an ugly way. And a lot of people like myself or Asmongold or Nuxtaku, we just don't really care to phrase it in a nice way because it's just walking on eggshells. Nobody's got time for that, man. People are going to be offended by everything. They're going to be offended by everything.
They just said, I'm offended. I felt like I was going to black out. He was invalidating my career. This is everything I worked for. Very much a feelings over facts kind of thing. And so I don't mind if there are people who are feminists or who have different political views to those that I have, but it's important that we be able to debate them, right? That we have rational arguments. And this was one of the first instances where people just said, no, I'm not gonna debate it. I'm just gonna say I'm offended. And that's gonna be the end of the story.
Because Jordan Peterson used to talk a lot about this, where he used to talk about one of the ways that females try and destroy or attack other people isn't through the physical realm, it's through reputation destruction. And this is essentially what you're talking about, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
There's a lot of debates that I see online, specifically on abortion. Abortion is a very good topic to watch and get informed on and figure out where you stand on that topic, because watching people debate in that is very interesting. There was actually a female debater who was anti-abortion, and there was a male arguing against her. This guy was retarded, by the way. Don't mean to poison the well too much. But he said because a child doesn't remember anything before 3 years of age, that it doesn't matter if they feel pain when aborted because they're not going to remember it anyways. Plus, they're dead. He believed in abortion even up to 9 months. That was completely fine, is what he said. He even said that sexual violence against children 3 and under, in his words, he said that it was fine because they won't remember it. It's horrifying the lengths that people will go to just because they don't want to pivot their points when they're in an indefensible position. Yeah, no. Denham's also said that as well, which in my opinion is fucking horrifying, and hopefully that's yours as well.